Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to our American colleagues. On behalf of BrightGen, represented by Kia and myself, welcome to our fourth Salesforce release webinar. Just to introduce ourselves, for those who don't know us, I am Clive Platt, Service Manager here at BrightGen, and with me is Kia Bowden. Kia is BrightGen's Chief Technical Officer. He's also a Salesforce Certified Technical Architect, as well as having every other Salesforce certification there is. And he's also a Salesforce MVP. Kia has trawled through the release notes on your behalf, and if you can just flip, Kia, to the agenda, you'll see here is the focus for this afternoon, which will give you a feel for where the key features are of the Winter 14 release. You'll see there's chatter, sales console, price blocks, knowledge, ideas, analytics platforms. A platform which Kia will go into in each individually in more detail. As usual, we welcome any questions you may have, but if you could enter these during the webinar using the webinar chat feature, if you could send these to organisers and panelists only, I'll collate these and Kia will cover these off in the question and answer session at the end of the webinar. I hope you find it useful. Don't worry if you don't get everything in one hit. There's a lot here. So we'll issue the slide deck and a YouTube recording after the event. And as always, we'll be more than happy to discuss any of the features with you individually after the session. So enough of me. I'll do no more than hand over to our MVP, Mr. Kia Bowden.
Thanks, Clive. Right, so first up in the Winter 14 release, we have chatter. As usual for a Salesforce release, there's been a number of changes in this. And these are, there's been a number of changes around the chatter groups functionality. Something we covered in our last webinar for those that attended was chatter publisher actions. And those worked off record feeds and off individuals feeds. So that has now been extended to cover group feeds. So you can see here we've got a screenshot of a chatter group named feedback, and as well as the usual post and file, we've also got the chatter actions here, the publisher actions here, of being able to create a new contact, log a call, a new opportunity, a new case, a new lead. So you can now create records directly from that feed, as long as it isn't a group that is accessible by customers. The records created still respect the sharing and security settings. So group members without permission to view records, so if you've got chatter-free users sharing the group with regularly licensed users, the chatter-free users won't be able to see those records. You can now mention groups in the same way that you would mention individuals when you're making a post. So in the second screenshot here, we've got a group where someone has posted asking whether we're going to talk about the new knowledge features in our Winter 14 webinar. The response is coming in saying, please post that to the Winter 14 webinar group. So by typing @win, Salesforce will then look for any groups whose name matches the stem of the name matches those first few characters, and will offer that. It'll offer up any matches for you to mention to those groups. Finally, on groups, archiving. So this is new functionality. Archiving a chatter group stops users from posting new content or from sharing files. So it stops them actually adding to the feed, to the group, but it leaves existing content and files in there for future reference. So it's not the same as deleting a group. Effectively, you're just suspending access to a group or removing access to a group. So administrators can manually archive a group once it's served its purpose. So, for example, if you have a group to collaborate on preparation for an event, then once that event's taken place, you may want to archive the group so that people don't inadvertently post to it, but you want to leave the content in place so that you can refer back to it when you're planning your next event. So an administrator can do that manually when you decide that it's served its purpose. However, there is some automatic archiving that takes place. So chatter groups that have no feed posts or comments for 90 days will be automatically archived by Salesforce on a weekly basis. Once it's been archived, it can be unarchived. So if one is archived and you know you're going to need to use it again, it's just been a quiet time, you can easily unarchive that. And that restores the capability to post and to share files. And if you don't want archiving, this isn't going to fit for you because you have lots of quiet times and it's just going to be another overhead on the administrator, then you can turn this off via the chatter settings setup page. There's been a few changes to the topics functionality. So you can now track and follow topics in Chatter, but this only works on the description field. So unless you're worried that people are going to be repurposing topics where they shouldn't, it's probably going to be of limited value at the moment. Of more interest are the permissions. So there's now granular permissions on topics that you can assign to users. So effectively, you can have topics managers. And these can be assigned either via their profile or using permission sets. And there's 4 types of permission. There's assign, which allows users to assign existing topics to feed items and also remove topics from feed items if they don't think they're appropriate. There's create, so they can create new topics and assign those to feed items. Delete, so they can delete topics and remove all topics assignments from feed items. And edit, where they can edit topic names and descriptions. So if you want to take full control over your topics, then you can ensure that people only have assign topics permissions, and then all they'll be able to do is use the topics. They won't actually be able to create or delete or change anybody else's posts. Something else that's going to be happening automatically with this new release is merging of topics. So 24 hours after the release goes live, topics with names that only differ in capitalization and spacing are going to be merged. And when users type topic names for feed posts, and these only differ from existing topic names, again through capitalization or spacing, they won't be allowed to create a new topic with that name. They'll only be allowed to choose from the existing topic name. Some other changes on Chatter. The filter and sort menus, which you can see over here on the right-hand side, were 2 separate menus that sat at the top of a feed. These have now been combined, as you can see on the right-hand side, into a single menu to save on some of the real estate. And also the posts and comments can now be up to 5,000 characters long, which is an increase up from 1,000 characters, and hopefully means that if you're in a discussion, you don't have to split your responses over multiple posts, much like you would with text messages or Twitter. Okay, next up we've got the tabbed profile interface. So the Chatter profile page has been reorganized to split the feed from information about the user. So I'm going to endeavor to show you this. If I exit out of there. Okay, good, we can all see my screen. If I go to Chatter and my profile, what you see here is I've got the feed section, and then if I click on the overview, that's got the about me, my files, my groups, my followers. So just in order to make best use of real estate, that's been moved into a tabbed profile. And I think what's going to happen over time is you'll then have the capability to add in additional tabs which contain additional information about things. But that's at the moment it's just been split into that particular interface. And the other new feature is Thanks, which is a work.com feature. So for those who aren't familiar with work.com, it's been built out of a company that Salesforce bought a couple of years ago called Ripple, and it's all around performance management. Changing performance management and performance reviews from being a once-a-year thing to continuous feedback. So a small amount of that functionality has now trickled into Salesforce, and that is the Thanks. And again, I'll endeavor to show you that. So if I go into my feed here, you can see I'm hovering over the Thanks button. So this allows me to award someone a badge, saying you're a top performer. And then I just type in whoever I want to thank. It's my assistant Clive, and I'll say great job on the webinar. And that then posts it to my feed, and everyone can see that I thought Clive did a great job. Okay, so that's basically a whistle-stop tour of the new Chatter features. Next up, the Salesforce console for sales. So for those that have been using the Salesforce Service Cloud console, as we do here at BrightGen, that's been renamed Console for Service, and a new Console for Sales has been introduced, which attempts to provide similar functionality, but on the sales side rather than on the service side. So this, again, if you're familiar with the Service Console, this will all be very familiar to you. If you're not, it basically presents a tabbed interface which allows you to work with multiple records on a single screen. It allows you to view a record and related items on a single page through that tabbed interface. So, for example, an opportunity, the associated account, and one or more contacts associated with that account. And you can also easily log a call, and that's kind of contextually based on the record that you're viewing. However, this is going to be a paid add-on. So if you're interested in this, you'd need to contact your account executive for pricing. So if we have a quick look at what this console looks like, so you have to create an application. If I close these tabs down quickly so I can produce them all from scratch. So if I go into accounts, Burlington Textiles, Core of America, so that goes into a main tab. If I then scroll down and open an opportunity, then we've got two sub tabs, one of which is the details of the account, and the next one has the opportunity. And if I scroll down here, and I'm dealing with Mr. Jack Rogers, if I click on that, that opens here as a sub tab, and the interaction log changes contextually to know that it's Jack Rogers in relation to an opportunity. Whereas if I click on this, it knows that it's actually, I was expecting that to change, but that hasn't. So that was me assuming there's more to it than there is. So that's basically the Sales Cloud console. As I say, that is going to be a paid add-on, so it won't be something you'll just be able to enable. You have to buy a license, and then there's some configuration that needs to be carried out before you can use that. Okay, next we have price books. So continuing the theme from the Summer 13 release, price books are getting closer to being a first-class S object rather than the sort of fairly unfunctional object they've been in the past. So in this release, price books are now available as the target of a lookup, which means that other objects can have a lookup to a price book. So it's not the price book supports lookups, but it can be the target. So an example of where you might use this is to specify a price book that an account ought to use. So you can create a price book lookup on the account and populate that when you create the account record. They also now have search layouts. So for those who aren't familiar with this term, these are the lists of fields that get displayed when you access things like search, when you open a lookup dialog, or the recent items on the price books tab. So up to now with price books, you'd have just had to take the default fields that Salesforce gave you. Now you can customize that to be a bit more useful for your users. So next we have some knowledge improvements. So this is quite a big one, we think. Users with Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, or Social Intranet license can now view knowledge articles without requiring a knowledge feature license. So previously, any user that needed to access knowledge needed the feature license, which I think was around £18 to £20 per user per month. Whereas now you only need to buy licenses for those users that author or articles or manage the article publication process. All you need to do is make sure that the users have access to the article types and the standard articles tab, and that they have the allow view knowledge permission enabled on their profile, and that should default to on when the new release is rolled out. There are a number of new custom field types available for articles. There's quite a few of them. They're all documented in the online help, but the kind of interesting ones are lookups. So you can have a knowledge article can then reference another object. So if it's particularly tied to an opportunity or an account or a product, then you can tie it directly to that. You can put email fields in there. So if you want an email address that people can click on in order to send emails, that can come there. And dependent pick lists and formula fields are also supported now. Okay, some other changes to knowledge. The chatter feed is present on the article toolbar, and that's now available on draft articles, which it wasn't before. So you can collaborate on articles before they're published, which is a useful thing. And finally, on knowledge, you can now embed videos from any provider and play them directly from an article view page. It's not just as simple as dropping a link to a video into the page, unfortunately. It requires a little bit of configuration. You have to enable multimedia content from the knowledge settings menu. You also have to create a Visualforce page, and that's the thing that has the embedded player. And then in the knowledge article, you have to include the Visualforce page because you can't include it directly. So if we have a look at that, so if we go, so this is my Visualforce page. that can display or embeds a video player. So this section here is the thing that actually pulls in the video. So that's just purely the copy of the embedded player from YouTube. And what I've done is put a couple of parameters in there so that the article that includes this can specify the height, the width, and the idea of the video that's going to be played in there. And then on an article, what you have to do, I'll just move that over a little bit. It's a little bit tricky to actually include the reference to the Visualforce page because you actually have to go into the HTML source editor and then copy and paste the actual address of the Visualforce page, which is here. And then in this case, I've allowed it to take an additional parameter, which is the YouTube video ID, and specify the width and height. If I just cancel that edit and go back to that. So as you can see, this is a draft article, and I can show the feed. So we can see that when this originally created, it just said we carried out our webinar, and then admin user has asked for the link to the video to be added, and Clive's jumped straight on that and is probably hoping for another thanks post out of that.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, and finally on knowledge, there's a new Knowledge 1 tab. So rather than having to look in articles to see draft articles and then bouncing around a number of different tabs, the Knowledge 1 tab allows you to view draft articles, published articles. It allows you to create a new article, and it allows you to manage the publication process for a particular article. It also allows you to search across both published and draft articles in one go. And it also, if you configure it up, and I'm not suggesting this is a straightforward configuration, but you can hook in the likes of SharePoint so that you can run a federated search, which searches your Salesforce knowledge base and also your SharePoint knowledge base, should you have such a thing. You have to configure Knowledge 1 users via their profile or permission sets, and they need this Knowledge 1 general user permissions. So if I go back to my demo org, so if I click here, we've got this is the new knowledge tab. So as you can see, I've got at the moment it's just showing me my draft articles, but I've got the concept of published and draft here. I can choose from all these data categories, another set of data categories there, because you can have a maximum of 3 active data categories. I can restrict it to 1 or more article types. I can create a new article of any type that I like directly from there. And also, if I've got an article which is in draft, I've then got the capability to edit it, publish it, delete it, or follow it. So all of the things that used to bounce around between the article and the article management tab and have to switch between draft and published, etc. All of that, the idea of this is now you've got a single kind of almost dashboard that you hit that allows you to control all of that. Okay, next up we have ideas. A couple of changes to ideas. You can view a user's community activities directly from their chatter profile now. So in this screenshot here, this is the overview tab of the tabbed chatter profile interface that we showed earlier on. And that allows me to see at a glance, how active they've been, which is not very, because this is in a pre-release org, which none of us are using. This does require configuration. You have to enable reputation on the ideas settings page before this area will be displayed on the tagged profile interface. Okay, and users can also can now like comments on ideas. So before you could just, the screen seems to have stuck. Just try and go backwards. Right, okay, looks like we're back. Sorry about that. Having 1 or 2 glitches today. So yes, previously with ideas, all that could happen was you could vote on an idea or vote against an idea, which added or removed 10 points, and users could comment. And now you can like comments. If you think it's a particularly erudite or witty comment, particularly useful comment, you can like that. And then the total number of likes will be displayed. The total number of likes that comments have received will be displayed underneath the comment. And also, if you change your mind at any point in time in the future and decide you don't like it anymore, you can just unlike it by clicking the unlike link. Okay, moving on to analytics. Historical trend reporting is something which we feel is going to be popular. So this basically allows you to create historical reports on historical data, up to 3 months worth of historical data, without using an analytic snapshot. So all you have to do is enable this functionality, and it will start capturing changes. And then you can use this in reports for day-to-day or week-to-week comparisons. Now, it captures up to 3 months data, and that does depend on your data usage. So if you've got an absolutely enormous amount of opportunities, for example, it's unlikely to be able to store 3 months worth of data because there will be an upper limit on that. And while it stores up to 3 months, it's designed for day-to-day, week-to-week comparisons. Month-to-month comparisons may work, but they're not guaranteed according to the release notes. So this requires some configuration. You have to navigate to reports and dashboards, set up menu, and click the new historical trending menu option. Then you pick the object that you're interested in tracking the historical values of. So this can be opportunities and also up to 3 other custom objects. So now the standard objects can be tracked. And then once you've chosen opportunity, you then click the Enable Historical Trending checkbox. This automatically tracks the 5 fields that you can see there: amount, close date, forecast category, probability, and stage. And you can add another 3 more, so you can trend up to 8 fields. So if it's a custom object rather than opportunity, you can choose all 8 fields, but if it's opportunity, there's 5 standard fields that will be tracked in all cases. So if I show you, I turned this on a couple of days ago in our sandbox. So if I now run this report. So this is the day-to-day opportunity comparison report, and you can see here I have a historical date, which is yesterday, the 22nd of, sorry, yeah, that's going to be the day before yesterday, isn't it? The 22nd. So 22nd of the 9th, 2013. So what you can see here is that I've then got, so the initial date is the 22nd of 9th. I didn't have any data in there, so we've got some empty values along here. However, on the 24th, I added in some opportunities, and then today I made some changes to those opportunities. So if I go and customize this, you can have up to 5 historical dates appearing in this. So at the moment, I've got yesterday and then the 22nd. So if I change that, I can say I'll have yesterday and 2 days ago. I save that, and then I run the report. What that's now showing me is the change over the last 3 days of my opportunities. So I can see this first one was initially raised with an amount of 100,000. Then I dropped it down to 90,000, which shows up in red because in the platform's opinion, I made it worse. And then today things got better because I increased it and moved it up to 110,000. If I hover over it, it shows me the changes. Dates, I think, just show up in red because I don't see how bringing something in earlier has made it worse, but that's been coloured as red. And also it will flag up if the stage changes. So that can include up to the 8 fields that you can trend. And as I say, you can include up to 5 historical dates to compare against, and those can be on a daily or a weekly. Monthly appears in the drop down but isn't supported. So if the monthly has problems, then that will be considered to be just a feature of your data usage and nothing that Salesforce can really do about it. Okay. So some more changes to analytics. You can embed report charts now in a record view page. So again, if I go back to my sandbox org, if I go to a page where I'm not doing anything. So if I go into accounts, we've just set up a simple one on this. We just created a bunch of opportunities associated with the test account. And then we've dropped in the chart for the test account, which shows the value of the opportunities that we've carried out against this test account, grouped by month. And if I click through on that, that will show me this is the report that's actually backing that. And you can see that chart's just been pulled straight through. The way I've configured this, user has to click refresh in order to pull through the latest information. But that's all configurable when you set the chart up through the page layout editor. You can then click the wrench on the chart, and you can say that it can refresh each time a user opens the page. At the moment, I'm filtering this by account ID because it knows my report needs the ID of an account. And if I wanted to report against related accounts to this one, I'd be able to do that. I can change the size, and I can change a few bits and pieces around the appearance as well. So you can have up to 2 of those appearing on a single page. Something else which is probably quite useful if you've got a particularly deep role hierarchy, you've got particularly long names, is that you can toggle the role hierarchy on a report. Again, if I go to my day-to-day opportunity, you can see here the role hierarchy. All it's showing me at the moment is just my particular role. Whereas if I click to expand that up, that's taking up 5 or 6 rows, and it's pushing the information I actually care about off the bottom of the screen. So that's easily toggleable to give you a little bit more real estate there. And finally, on the analytics front, there's a new permission which allows you to restrict the creation of list views. So if you have users and you would prefer that they don't create their own list views, maybe because you want to ensure they're using the same list views as everybody else in their team, there's a new permission to control this. It's called Create and Customize List Views, and all users will have this turned on by default, so they'll all have the capability to create list views. Okay. Next up, we have the changes on the. We've lumped these together into setup security platform, everything that's not basic user stuff, really. So first up, something which we think is going to be a great benefit to administrators looking after an instance where you've got regular user churn. You can now freeze user accounts, which effectively suspends login access, but doesn't change anything else about this user account. So you'd use this where you need to carry out more work to completely deactivate a user. So for example, if someone's going to leave, you want to deactivate them, but unfortunately they're selected in a custom hierarchy field, or they're the only recipient of a workflow email. At that point in time, Salesforce won't let you deactivate them. They'll insist that you go and make all these changes before you can deactivate that user. But your policy is that you need to close them out straight away. What you can do now is just click a button to freeze the user account, and from that point in time, the user won't be able to log in. It doesn't free up the license because it's not the same as a deactivation. All it does is suspend their login access, and you can then go and do what you need to do and then deactivate them when you're ready. However, you can also unfreeze them. So if you just want to suspend someone's access for a period of time, for whatever reason they don't need access to the system or they shouldn't be allowed access to the system, you can easily freeze them and then just go back and click the unfreeze button and give them access again. There's a new feature on the setup side of things. This is a beta feature, but for those that aren't aware, Salesforce beta features aren't like beta used to be in the old days. Beta in Salesforce means that it's production quality. It just has some known limitations, and it's also intended to go live within a certain number of releases, which I believe is 2. So you can safely use beta functionality knowing that it won't disappear underneath you. So setup search allows you to search the names of users, profiles, roles, permission sets, and public groups from within the setup menu. So again, if I demo this, so if I go to my force.com homepage, so I want to look up Clive's user information. So I've typed in Platt, and what it's done is it's immediately on the left-hand side executed a search against the menu items, and it's found nothing. However, it's inviting me to press enter for advanced setup search. And if I do that, it'll then execute this further search against things like users, profiles, roles. At this point in time, I can see here's Clive's user. This has to be enabled through the user interface menu, and it can take a little while for the indexing of all the groups, permission sets, profiles, etc. to take place. So don't expect to turn it on for it necessarily to be picking everything up immediately. Another new beta feature is that you can now create workflow rules and actions on the user object. So this would allow you, for example, to send a custom welcome email when new users are added to the system, or to use workflow field updates to deactivate temporary employees after a set number of days. The one thing you can't do on the workflow for the user object is create tasks. So you can send outbound messages, send emails, and make field updates, but no task creation. User sharing is now generally available, so users can be shared like pretty much any other S object in Salesforce. You can set organization-wide defaults. So if you don't want everyone being able to see every other user in the system, you can set that to private, and then you can create sharing rules to control the visibility of users to each other, if that's important to you. And sharing rules now have a description field, so rather than having to derive the purpose of a sharing rule from its configuration, you can now give a detailed explanation for whichever administrator may be lucky enough to come after you. Okay, so the next item is manager group sharing. So this is a little bit of a complicated one to explain. I'm going to give it my best shot, so please bear with me. If there's anything that's unclear, then please post questions in the chat. So role hierarchy sharing, if you think about that for a moment, that means that anyone in a role above you in the hierarchy gets access to your records, those that you own or are shared with you, and you get access to all records owned or shared by the roles beneath you in the role hierarchy. So in the example hierarchy shown here, where we've got sales director is above sales manager is above sales agent, and I'm the red stick figure in the sales manager role, I get access to everyone's records in the sales agent role, even though half of them don't report to me. And the 3 users in the sales director role above me each get access to my records, even though I only report to one sales director. So manager groups allow you to share records with individual users rather than everyone in the role. So using this functionality, I can restrict the sharing of those users that report to me. I can restrict the sharing to those users that report to me and those users that I report to. So those stick figures are now shown in green. So it's only the sales director who I report to gets to see my records, and it's only the sales agents who report to me that I get to see directly. So this is accomplished through 2 groups, which are provided by the platforms. These aren't like public groups. You can't manipulate them and manage them in any way. They're automatically calculated for you. So there's 2 different types of group. There's the managers group, which is my direct manager and also their direct manager, and so on up through the chain. So anywhere there's a direct link in the chain of command. And then you have the managers subordinates group, which is my direct reports, their direct reports, and so on. So again, anywhere there's a direct chain. So manager group sharing, while it can be pretty powerful, and it may appear to be a solution to a lot of problems, there are a few things to remember about this. It's not enabled by default. You have to contact Salesforce and have it enabled as a feature. And it requires some configuration which have some impacts. So you have to turn off, for the particular S-object you're setting up this on, you have to turn off grant access through hierarchy, and then create sharing rules that grant access to the managers group or the managers subordinate group. But what you can't do is mix and match. So you either use the hierarchy or you use the manager group. You can't mix and match the 2 on a single object. And you also have to populate the manager field on the user record for all users, because this is how the management chain is determined. Otherwise, Salesforce wouldn't know which of the users in the role above yours is your direct manager. So just a few things to be aware of there before enabling this. So Salesforce now supports 2-factor authentication. So when this is enabled, users not only enter their password, they also enter an additional time-based token from an application on their mobile device. So for those of us that have been in the industry for a little while, it's like having the old RSA key dongles, which just have a code that changes every 30 seconds or whatever, and you have to type that in, and that proves that you've got access to that additional security. You can require this 2-factor authentication for users to log in, or you can let them log in using regular password, but then you can add 2-factor authentication to high assurance dashboards or applications. So that's where you feel there's particularly sensitive information. Probably something to be slightly wary of before enabling for your users, because it means they'll have to do that every time, which I would imagine would be quickly seen as a tax on their day, and possibly quite annoying for them. Another change to security is you can now customize your login page, which you never used to be able to, for fear that you'd make it look not like Salesforce and confuse people and spoof people. So you can now add your own logo, your own background color, and a custom URL on the right-hand side. So it will still follow the basic layout of Salesforce, but it can be branded to your company. However, this does require you to be using the My Domain feature. The My Domain feature effectively allows you to set up a Salesforce endpoint with your company encoded in it. So if it was BrightGen, it would be brightgen.my.salesforce.com. And the reason for that is that in order to display the branded login page, Salesforce needs to know something about who you are. And if you just hit login.salesforce.com, you could be absolutely anybody, so it can only give you the generic one. Turning on my domain can break bookmarks, and it means that people need to always use that to access. So again, something maybe to think about a little bit before you go that route. But if a branded experience on Salesforce is important to you, it can be a useful solution. Okay, and finally, final slide on the platform, sandboxes. So sandboxes are now bigger. The developer sandbox now has a 200 megabyte limit, up from 10 megabytes. And the configuration-only sandbox has been renamed Developer Pro, and now has increased storage from 500 megabytes to 1 gigabyte, all included at the same cost that it's currently there at. Change sets have had some additions. They now support user permissions in the included profile. So up until now, if you included a profile and a change set, it would just pull in the appropriate CRUD type permissions for the fields and objects that were present in the change set. Whereas now you can actually add in things like, if someone's a Knowledge 1 user, for example, then you can apply that permission to the profile in the change set, and that will be uploaded as well. So change sets have also changed the way that things deploy. So rather than you upload a change set, you click on deploy, and then that is immediately deployed in real time synchronously. It's that places it onto the change set queue, and it happens asynchronously to avoid contention if you have multiple users deploying changes at the same time, which can be a problem from time to time in larger organizations with multiple work streams. And finally, if you're a developer and you use a lot of JavaScript or CSS or plain text static resources, you'll be familiar with the fact that you have to download the static resource, edit it, and then re-upload it as a static resource every time you want to make a change. So the latest version of the developer console includes a source code editor that allows you to edit JavaScript, XML, CSS, and text static resources in place without having to go through that download-upload loop. Okay, so that's the end of our overview of the release. It's a tour of the highlights that we believe are of interest to you, our customers. There's obviously other changes that we haven't covered today because there's 300 plus pages of release notes, so there's quite a bit in this particular release. If you'd like more information on what's in there, then head over to the Winter 14 release portal at the short link shown, and there you'll find the release notes, say 300 pages of those, so set aside some time if you're planning to read those. Additional documentation around the release, feature videos, training videos, and plenty more besides. Okay, so now over to Clive for any questions that have cropped up.
Okay, thanks, Keir. Right, so just the one at the moment.
Okay.
So somebody's asking about historical trending. So when you say that month-on-month comparisons may not work, what will happen if they fail?
So what happens is that if they fail, I think what will happen when they fail is relatively undefined. It will be like a report failing. So what's likely to happen is that there's too much data to be considered and consolidated for a month-to-month comparison, and what you'll get is a report timeout. So the 10-minute timeout that you may have experienced if you've reported across several million rows. So it won't be blocked by the platform. It'll do its best to try and do it, and it may well succeed if you don't have a huge amount of data. But it may fail, and it will basically fail just by not completing in the appropriate amount of time.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to check if there's any more questions. No, I think that's it. We're done. So thank you, everybody, for attending. I'll send out the slide deck and the link to the YouTube channel. By all means, call us here at the BrightGen office if you want to talk about anything in particular or any more detail around any of the features. And also we'll be sending out a follow-up email with a link to a survey. We'd really appreciate it if you could fill this in and let us know what your thoughts are about the webinars, because we're always looking to improve these. And if you can, if you've got any ideas of how it may be more useful to yourself and everybody else, we'd be more than happy to hear them. And thanks once again for everybody joining. Hope you found that useful, as I say, and hopefully speak with you all again soon. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.